Hello, algebra students. So today what we're going to do is talk about two-step equations, solving two-step equations. We've done one-step equations, and now we're going to take it just one step further, add an additional step. So if you weren't feeling real great about one step, hopefully this will confirm or help you confirm those ideas in your head. So let's take an example problem. -4 plus 7x equals 3. I want you to ask yourself every single time, where is my variable? What am I solving for? I'm wanting to solve for x. Remember, my goal is to get x by itself. The variable always wants to be by itself. So we've got to move everything else over that is around the x. Okay? So the first thing you're going to want to do always is you're going to, in this problem, we need to get rid of this third wheel right here. This -4 is being the third wheel with the 7x, okay? We need to get rid of it first. So how do we get rid of a -4? We add 4 to each side, okay? So once we do that, we have 7x equals 7 because our -4 and our +4 make 0, so those go away, okay? Now I want to get x alone. What's going on with x? It's being multiplied by 7, so I do the inverse of multiplication, which is division. So I'm dividing each side by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. Those cancel, so I get x equals 1. What not to do? -4 plus 7x equals 3. We do not want to start with this term and divide by 7. You cannot do that, okay? You are going to be doing opposite order of operations here, which means normally we multiply and divide when following order of operations. But because we're solving for a variable, we're undoing all of those operations. We go in reverse order, okay? So I need to do my addition or subtraction before I do multiplication or division. That is very important. So look at the next problem. My goal is to solve for x, get it alone. What's in the way of it right now? Well, the -2 is in the way, but that's multiplication. The 6 is also in the way of getting x alone. So I need to move the 6 to the other side of the equal sign, okay? Because my goal is to get x all alone on the left-hand side. So I look to the front of the 6 to see what sign it is. It's a +6. Which means to move it to the other side, I do the opposite. The opposite of a positive is a negative. So I'm going to subtract 6 from each side. That would be my step. Subtract 6 from each side. Well, 6 minus 6 we all know to be 0. So now I bring down what I have here. Do not make the mistake and only bring down a 2x. You've got to remember about this negative sign right there. So I have a -2x. Is going to be equal to 10 minus 6, which is 4. Now I look to see what operation is going on with my x. Well, it's multiplication, -2 times x. So I do the inverse of multiplication so that I can separate the -2 and the x, and I divide, and then I round up, I end up with my answer, which is x equals -2. How can I verify that I made this equation true? I can take x equals -2, plug it right in for there, and make sure I get a true statement. So let's do that. I have 6 minus 2 times -2. Does that equal 10? That's what I'm going to check. Well, I have 6. -2 times -2 is a +4. Does that equal 10? In fact, it does. So again, on your test over equations, anytime you solve an equation, you can always guarantee that it's right by substituting the value back into the variable to assure that you solved the problem. What I want you to do right now is press pause. I want you to test and see how well you're understanding these concepts I've just taught. So work these two problems. When you're finished, we're going to go over another example or two, and we'll check these in class. Okay? So you should have just finished the two problems on your own. Now let's look at two problems that involve fractions, okay? So same exact thing, guys, but now we have fractions. My goal here is to solve for y. What do I need to do? I need to move everything else to the other side. Okay? I don't want to start by getting rid of that 8 because that's division. And if I do my order of operations backwards to solve an equation, I need to start with addition or subtraction. So I look right here to this negative 3/4 that I need to get rid of. How do I move that negative 3/4 to the other side? I add 3/4. I do the opposite. So I'm going to add 3/4 to each side. Those are going to cancel. A negative and a positive 3/4 cancel. So I bring down my y divided by 8. Now I need to add these things. I need to see that I get a common denominator here. In order to add fractions, I must have a common denominator. That was a horrible 7. Okay, so I got my common denominator of 12. Now I'm ready to add. 9 plus 7 gives me 16/12. I'm still not finished because y is not alone. I need to get rid of this division by 8 here. How do I get rid of division by 8? Well, we do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply each side by 8. Okay, so now that I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and simplify this a little bit before I multiply. You have two options. You can multiply straight across and then reduce at the end, or I'm going to simplify this a bit beforehand to make my life easier. I see that a 4 is a factor of both of these numbers, so I'm going to take out a factor of 4 and reduce that. Now when I multiply straight across, I have 16 times 2, which is 32, and 3 times 1, which is 3. 32/3 would be my answer for the value of y. Okay, that can't be reduced any, so I leave it. Last one here. Why don't you press pause, see if you can do it, and then we'll check your answer. All right, so first thing I wanted to do was move that 3/4 over. I move it over by subtracting it because it's positive. So I subtract 3/4 to each side. I'm left with 2/3 r is equal to, once again, I need to get a common denominator. That is 9/12. Okay, this problem is very similar. It has some similar aspects to it. I'm subtracting 7/12 minus 9/12, which is negative 2/12. That can be reduced, okay? But I'm not going to worry about that quite yet. But you can reduce it right now if you want to. But what I want to look at first is getting rid of this 2/3 that's being multiplied by the r. I just did that in red to make it more clear. 2/3 is being multiplied by r. How do we undo multiplication? Well, we divide. So normally we divide each side by 2/3. So I have a fraction divided by a fraction. We know how to divide fraction by fraction, but instead of writing it like that, instead of writing dividing by 2/3, I know that division of a fraction is the same thing as multiplication of its reciprocal. What is the reciprocal of 2/3? It's 3/2. So I'm going to multiply each side by 3/2. When I do that, my 3's cancel, my 2's cancel, so I'm left with just my r, which is what I wanted. Now I multiply straight across. Negative 2 times 3 gives me negative 6, and 12 times 2, that's a 2 right there. 12 times 2 gives me 24. Now I want to reduce that or simplify that a little bit by a factor of 6, so I'm left with negative 1/4 would be my value for r. Plug that in, check it to make sure that it is correct. And last problem. Spencer belongs to a movie club in which he pays an annual fee of $39.95 and then rents DVDs for 99 cents each. In 1 year, Spencer spent $55.79. We want to know how many DVDs did he rent throughout the year. So I want you guys to see if you can set up an equation, solve that equation to find the number of DVDs. It's going to be a 2-step equation, and we'll check it in class. Have a great night, guys.